lower star rating plans are probably, or most likely operating at a loss, but because they're trying to keep up on benefits, but at the same time, they need to be investing majorly in operations and incentives to achieve stars to get out of that cycle.
Quality improvement in healthcare. It's typically described as a framework for systematically improving care. In reality, it's an endless struggle to align policy, data, and processes with human behavior. Join the RWC team and guests from across the industry as we tackle the toughest challenges facing quality today. From culture to capital, from strategy to technology, join us as we go beyond quality. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Beyond Quality, where we will episode by episode make the case that quality is a reflection of how an organization shows up and how an organization behaves under pressure. At the same time, we'll strive to dismantle any thought that quality is just a department or a program. I'll be your host, Rex. I lead RWC, an organization that focuses entirely on improving quality in the healthcare space. And in each episode, another member of my team and I will have a discussion with one or more industry experts about what we all believe are the most pressing topics facing our industry. In these conversations, we don't want to stop at concepts and tactics. We want to go above, below, beside, and beyond quality to discover what's actually driving it across an organization, across teams, and across industries. Today, as we kick off the very first episode, I'm joined by the guy that helps shape the conversation about quality across our industry and has helped me lead RWC for the past 4 years. He's a neuroscientist turned healthcare analyst, turned quality strategist, turned quality improvement consultant, turned president of RWC. No matter the challenge, he's seen it, he's probably fixed it. And please welcome Nate Lucena. Nate. Hey, man.
Howdy.
Good to have you.
Thanks.
Hey,
How's it going?
Good. Did I miss anything that you want to say to the listeners about your background?
No, I don't think so. I think folks have heard me talk enough times, and I've been around the RWC circle for long enough. But just really happy to be here. Really excited to kick this off. I think some much needed conversations are going to happen in this forum, particularly in light of everything that's happening with our regulatory bodies right now.
Definitely. On episode 1, do you want to tee up the topic and in our guest today?
Sure. Yeah. For episode 1 of the podcast, we wanted to take a little bit of a step back and broaden the conversation out a little bit to something that is a really important aspect of why quality performance is important, which is quality as a financial strategy. When we think about stars within the Medicare space, even when we think, maybe about quality withholds in the Medicaid space or just total cost of care across products, the reason we have a lot of these quality measures is really to control the costs while improving the outcomes for beneficiaries and members. And, I know we'll argue today that the financial health of an organization actually is inextricably linked to quality performance and the degree to which an organization has a focus, on quality and integrates that within their bottom line. So, we're gonna talk about that today, and we have a really special guest to help us dive deep into that. Eve Anderson, hey, how's it going?
Hey, doing
Welcome.
well.
We're so
Excited to be
excited that
here.
we're so excited that you said yes. So, Eve is somebody that Rex and I have actually worked with for a few years now. She is a very brilliant actuary, and she has a lot of great ideas that she actually brings to the quality space, even though I think it was not her primary entry point into healthcare. So, Eve, you want to give us just a little intro and tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got here before we dive in?
Yeah, so I've been an actuary in the healthcare space for the last 10 years or so. And a lot of my career has been focused in Medicare Advantage at regional growing health plans. So my perspective is really that small plan perspective. My expertise is in the bid and product strategy, quality, risk adjustment, and value-based care financial arrangements. I spend a lot of my time on not traditional actuarial work, but more what I would call strategic analytics. And quality is a really good example of that. Not a lot of actuaries work in the quality space, but I think it's a great place to take your technical training and apply it to advise on strategy. So I like to think I speak both languages on the technical side and the strategic side In my current role, I'm the director of Actuarial Services at Zing Health, which is a growing Medicare Advantage plan based out of Chicago, but operating in 6 states. I just joined Zing a few months ago, so there's a lot to learn, but it's a very exciting place to be. Zing has a strong mission to serve historically underserved populations. So we offer CSNP, chronic special needs plans. So we're focused on complex high need members, and that brings about its own quality challenges as well. So I'm super excited about this topic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's dive on in here. I mean, I think what's interesting about starting here is, Eve, you were talking about working in the bid and like sort of like the strategic analytics of it all. And as quality folks like me and Rex are, the bid is often like kind of where we want to get to make our business cases. And it's still so rarely a point in the organization that folks naturally connect us to if they bring us in to help them with stars. Often we still find that we'll come in, we'll do a full assessment, we'll, make a bunch of recommendations and start executing them. But in order to link them to the financial performance of the product, we kind of need to be at the table for the bid discussion, talking through benefit changes, talking through things that might have negative impact to beneficiaries or negative perceived impact to beneficiaries. And often still, we are brought to that table kind of too late to make an impact and really shape how that business case gets built out. So, and that just leads into kind of this vicious cycle that I think we see that you've probably experienced at a small health plan or maybe at a plan that has lower star ratings, where these plans need to be competitive in order to grow rapidly. But having a large influx of new members is a real challenge for quality performance, but they need to perform high on quality to be both financially competitive and then competitive in the benefits that they're able to offer. And I know you and I have talked about where traditional, maybe like actuarial models or actuarial science can break down somewhere in that cycle. So I'm interested maybe to start there with you and hear your thoughts about what the challenges are, even though, we hear this thing, quality is everybody's responsibility, which is like so trite now. It doesn't really actually mean anything. Like, what does it mean to you for quality to be a financial strategy for the health of the organization? And what are the challenges kind of that you have experienced being associated with that?
Yeah, well, let me start with just talking a little bit more about that cycle.
Hmm.
So 4 and 5 star plans get significantly more revenue from CMS via rebates and QBPs,
Hmm.
which means that they can offer better benefits. So in order to compete and gain membership, plans with lower star ratings will offer the same benefits as those 5 star plans, but do so without getting the revenue required to offer them. So they go in at a loss. They literally put in their bid that they are going to get less revenue than their expected cost. The alternative is these plans offering less rich benefits that they can afford, but like you said, they're not going to get any members, and growing rapidly is really important for a new plan entering the market. So they're having to choose between being competitive and being profitable. Most often, it's these new or growing plans getting lower star ratings, and that's because they have less operational maturity, they're less efficient, they probably have less influence over providers in their markets than the bigger plans. So that's what's tricky, is that the smaller, lower star rating plans are most likely operating at a loss, but because they're trying to keep up on benefits, but at the same time, they need to be investing majorly in operations and incentives to achieve stars to get out of that cycle. And it probably costs more because they're not at scale yet. They have less leverage with providers. And then there's also, of course, the huge lag between measurement and financial impact. So it takes a lot of patience, a lot of persistence. No one is just stumbling upon 4 stars. It takes a lot of work.
in, Using Medicare stars as the probably the best example for all of this, right? So we won't stay there for the whole conversation, but where you're going right now, Eve, like in that bid strategy room when you're talking about benefit changes and provider contracts, coming up and changes that we need to make. What's the level of understanding around the financial impact to stars, just using this example, in that room?
Yeah. Um, it depends. Like at when I was at a health plan that had more than just Medicare Advantage, it was harder. It was a lot of me explaining those dynamics. Now that
Hmm.
I'm at a company that is entirely Medicare Advantage, it feels like everyone is on the same page. But you have to constantly remind kind of both parties. So you're constantly reminding or helping the Stars team sort of articulate and think through like the long-term impact and the revenue impact. But then on the other side, like when I'm looking at the financials and talking about the financials, I have to keep reminding even the finance team, like, remember, part of this loss is because we don't have stars. So we have to be thinking about, okay, what would it look like if we did have the star ratings? And then like that helps us think about, is this a viable business, right? Like what do we need to be doing differently once we get stars in place? And of course, how do we get stars in place?
Yeah, and like you said, you are one of the rare people who speaks both languages, right? Um, and I think it's so important, and I think that should be something to take away for organizations that have there's this need for both the finance people, right, to be able to understand what it takes to, and we're going to get more into this with you, I know, like, forecasting human behavior and like, all the dependencies, like how do you really, there's not a lot of certainty around a lot of things, right? And when you're building a financial model, you want that certainty. You don't always have that, obviously. So there's this learning aspect on the financial side, but this huge learning aspect on the business and quality side where they don't always do a great job of articulating the financial impact, the ROI, right, the need, the case study. So there is a huge need for people like you who understand both, but just to also to educate, right? I mean, I think you said it's a steady stream of education that has to happen with the people in the room, right?
Yeah. And there's so much education too that the finance side needs from the quality side. Like I have learned so much about the business that I never would have had access to if I didn't end up working on quality. Like I remember being like, "Can someone explain what an appeal is?" There's just so many parts that you would never know, and that you simplify being on the finance side. So understanding the operations and the clinical side has been so helpful, I think, for my career.
Yeah, one of the things I think I alluded to this, that the continuing education that I think needs to happen is most star leaders, and even folks like I think within a stars department or a quality department, like they understand how to maybe calculate the QBP, right? It's like pretty straightforward as long as you know kind of the right spreadsheet to get to, or you can get like a pretty close approximation. But when we think about, you were talking about like the financial viability of the product, and that translates all the way down to a single initiative when you're trying to figure out what the ROI is, right? What am I spending? What am I getting? And is it getting me to this overall goal? That ongoing education and sometimes the missing piece around, yeah, I know what 5% QBP means. I know what an additional rebate means, but like, where are those dollars coming from? And then where do they go in the long term sort of viability of the business? I think that's the missing piece. And I think
Mm.
Rex is spot on that oftentimes the organizations that have that fluency to go back and forth right between the quality department and the business and the finance side is because there's a translator kind of like somewhere in the middle who's thinking really hard about how to assign ROI to different things, all the way from the most granular thing and then trickle that all the way up right to something like the bid. Can you talk a little bit about like your experience or process of helping organizations along this pathway to return on investment, whether it's murky or concrete?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to address one thing you said about, I think that's really clarifying to me to understand that the disconnect is, where do those dollars go? So just one thing I'd say to that is, a lot of times, like I said, like plans are offering the benefits that they would offer if they had 4 or 5 stars. So a lot of times it's just
Hmm.
getting the margin there. Like they're not going to add benefits once they do get the QBP. It's like all of a sudden they're made whole for the benefits they were already offering, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, on ROI, yeah, so ROI in general is hard, really hard in the stars world. It's like kind of an actuary's nightmare. It's hard to say what exactly caused a gap to be closed.
Right.
Or if you think about a member incentive or an outreach program, like for CAPS, how are you ever going to know if that's what changed your CAP scores or not? You're not going to know. And then the revenue impact is also hard, of course, like we just talked about, because it's bid math. It's also super lagged. Um, so yeah, ROI is hard. And I've seen, like vendors will throw out very large numbers that you're just like, okay, how do we even get a gut check on this? Bonus payments to providers sometimes don't make sense. Like, why are we paying out $1 million to this provider when we haven't gained anything on stars as a health plan? There are programs that impact the same measures, but we never really analyze the overlap between them. Like, are both necessary? So all of those things in general make me very skeptical of the ROIs that I see around quality programs. But at the same time, I know how important it is to invest in quality improvement. So what do? I think like the best thing you can do is understand the potential impact of a program, the what if, and then if that aligns with the cost of the program. So look at how many members will be impacted, what measures do we expect to be impacted, and like what percentage does that make up of your total star rating. So if this program got all those members to 5 stars just because of this program on those measures, how much would the overall star rating be impacted? Would that lead to a bump in revenue? And how does that compare to the price point? Or maybe this initiative alone wouldn't lead to a bump in revenue, but maybe it's a combination of initiatives together that would have to work out in order for us to get the next revenue bump. So you have to paint the picture, like what would have to happen for this to make a difference? Is that difference reasonable? And then how does that compare to how much we're investing?
Yeah, the word that comes to mind for me is contribution, right? Like what's the contribution of this initiative for the overall star rating? It's hard, to your point, right? There's so many measures. Some correlate, some don't. Some initiatives cut across several measures. Some are a single measure, but is that measure a make or break measure for your overall rating? It might be, right? It might be just one measure, but if you move 2 stars on this measure, it might be the best thing you can do. I mean, who knows, right? Like everyone's math is different. Something else you said too, when you said like going from one organization that had multiple lines of business to where you're now at an organization that focuses, I think, entirely on Medicare Advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just keep thinking about the depth of expertise, right? The the history of historical knowledge, right, around a program. If you're an organization like Zing now, right, where and if you have some staff turnover, you've still got a lot of Medicare expertise, right? So it's not as detrimental to your line of business as it is over here, where you have a lot of shared services and you have
Mm.
4 or 5 lines of business, and you have teams sharing, and no one with or very few people with a really deep domain knowledge around a specific program like Medicare Stars. And if you do lose 1 or 2 of those people, you are in serious trouble because you don't have deep domain expertise anywhere else in the organization across shared services or across other lines of business. So,
Yeah.
and when I think about the financial conversations in the bid room, or just when you're trying to generate a case study to get funding for an initiative, I mean, you need that domain expertise to understand the program and to understand the impact and to understand the finances if you do or don't do this initiative that you lose if you have some turnover. It just makes me think a lot
Mm.
about the importance of education and the importance of keeping a shared understanding top of mind, and as sort of number one on your priority list across these key people, if especially if you have shared services, right, and have multiple lines of business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And yeah, and if a new quality leader comes in and then you have to establish that relationship again with the quality leader, you don't know what their
Right.
understanding is of Medicare. And I have my slides that I go to, my go-to slides to talk about bid mechanics and all that.
Yeah, one other thing I heard before we move on to is, Eve, I think what I'm hearing from you is a tension that a lot of organizations face where they need to understand ROI and default to a place that's more comfortable to say, like, this is the ROI, this is the data point that tells us what this initiative was worth. But in quality and lots of other departments, in a health plan as well, you need the nuance to actually realistically be able to understand how all these pieces fit together. So it's not just one number that comes out of every single initiative that then factors into the finances. It's kind of a tolerance for ambiguity and understanding all the different scenarios that you have, to really be able to incorporate that in a way that makes your strategy more well informed and sustainable.
Yeah, and it's dynamic. It's like, okay, if we don't hit this lever, what's our backup lever? Like, what are the three
Yeah.
things we're going to focus on? And if this one doesn't work out,
Yep.
what's the backup?
Yeah. Totally. I think in the context of the health plan right now, we're in this kind of atmosphere or ecosystem that wants a clean cut, hard and fast answer before they move on to the next thing. And I think
Hmm.
part of the beauty of what you're talking about from the lived experience is that, like, you're actually going to be making better decisions if you allow the room, right? If you sort of take the time and allow your brain to think about, different possibilities and scenarios and allow that nuance in, it's going to help you make better decisions for the business.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Eve, when you're talking about ROI and how difficult it is, right? We're like I keep thinking about. I mean, every organization's different. Every the way it's structured, the relationship it has with its key provider partners. It might be owned by them. It might not be. It might have not a strong relationship at all with them. Um, and even its relationship with its members can vary, based on I don't know, so many things. Are you urban or rural, right? Are you like how like do you have offices where members can come in, or is it all online? Just so many different things. And even with your employees, right? When you're an actuary and you are trying to make a projection, whether it's for overall star rating or just for the impact of an initiative, I'm just curious, do you take that into account? Do you take like the human dependency into account? It's a
Like,
big question.
tell me more. So the human dependency, like, I mean,
Like,
yeah, go ahead.
okay, so like provider relationships, right? Like if you have
Hmm.
um whatever 30 key provider groups where the majority of your business is, but um 25 of them you don't have a strong relationship with. I mean, I'm sure you do you take that into account when you're understanding the impact of an increased incentive to providers, um, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot about leverage in the quality in the healthcare world. It's like um, definitely I'm thinking about, okay, is this incentive going to matter to this provider group? So and how much
Right.
does it matter to us? So let's say we have a provider group that 40% of our members are attributed to, but and so we're paying them out like massive PMPM incentives for every member they see. But for this provider group, we're only 5% of their book of business. The incentives that we pay them are going to matter a lot to us, but not be enough to make a difference for them. So that's critical to think about. I think that and in value based care arrangements, you have to be thinking about who has the leverage in this situation, and who's winning and who's losing. And then from the member perspective, I think knowing your membership is a huge part of modeling that I try to incorporate. It's when I was at Hopkins, I'm from Maryland. I was there for 5 years. I felt like I knew this population so well. I knew what they were going to do next. And that helped me a lot with these models where there was a lot of uncertainty, just to be like, what makes sense here? How are they going to react to this? But that's hard in a growing plan where you're getting a lot of new members in new markets, and you don't really have that sense of of what your members are like yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the uncertainty, so I think it's safe to say quality is governed by laws of uncertainty, right? Like, we're never going to forecast exactly what will happen. We're never going to get it exactly right. There, like we're talking about with the human dependencies, with the industry dependencies, we're never going to be able to get it exactly right. So let's just build a model that'll get us as close as possible, right? Like if I'm an actuary, I assume that's what you're kind of focused on. Like how do you we'll get as close as we possibly can, then we'll use human intuition to, like you with your Maryland knowledge, right? Like you would build a model based on what the numbers say, but then the population pretty well because you live there, so you're able to fine tune it from that aspect. I'm just wondering, taking all that uncertainty into account, you know, what does quality as a financial strategy look like in practice with all that uncertainty? Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of scenario testing. There's a lot of living in gray area, being strategic, having to get everyone out of their technical mindset. It's having to tell quality leaders, like, yes, I am an actuary, but I can't tell you exactly what your star rating is going to be. I can tell you with this combination of all these different factors, here's what it's looking like, and then I can help you think through, like, what do we prioritize? Um, so it's just being flexible. But as far as yeah, what does quality as a financial strategy look like in practice? I think it's there's a lot of like playing the long game. You have to have a long-term plan that reflects the lag between stars measurement and revenue impact. I think financial goals and quality goals need to be aligned. So when you say our financial goal in 2029 is X, because of that, our star rating needs to be a 4. What are we doing differently today to get there? Where are we going to invest? Um, and then we've also talked a lot about how quality needs to be considered in all conversations. So um, when we are in bid decisions, we're looking at, okay, if we make this product change, how is that going to impact caps? How is that going to impact preventive care? We need quality to weigh in there. And then more broadly, it's just getting used to thinking about financial performance just as heavily as quality performance. So again, like looking at a product, if a product isn't doing well financially but shows promise on quality, like let's think about that. That's just as good. So like if maybe members in this product have great medication adherence, why? What can we take from that and apply to other plans? Um, and then of course, like in how we pay providers too, quality needs to be considered as part of the finances. It's critical to hold providers accountable for how they contribute to star ratings. And I think that should show up in risk sharing agreements.
What advice do you have? And you kind of alluded to this, but when you're working with quality leaders who might not have a financial background, right? What what guidance do you have for them, um, in in helping to make their case, helping to communicate with leadership, helping to communicate with finance and actuarial? What's your guidance to them when you're working with them now, or for someone who specifically doesn't have a financial background, right? Any tips you would give them?
Yeah, I think it's really important to to keep getting everyone on the same page. Like every time you're in an audience that isn't just quality, say like, here's the measure landscape. Here's the percentage that's admin, caps, HEDIS. What's changing from year to year? What are our like core level levers? And then like when you're trying to prove the ROI of an initiative, like I mean, this is like a general rule of thumb for me, but always
Mhm.
define the problem. Start
Right.
with, okay, what are we trying to solve? Get everyone on the same page. What measures are we impacting? What members are we impacting? What happens if we don't do this program? I also think it's another angle, a way to look at this is like, in order to prove that there is a gap, look at plans similar to your health plan. So they are able to, achieve med adherence 5 stars. They're not able to achieve caps. So like maybe let's not put all of our eggs in the caps basket. Let's focus more on medication here. So I think, yeah, proving that there is a gap, like I said, and then proving that we need to do something about it, connecting it to the long-term plan. Um, so say, yeah, so our financial goal is this, so we need to be investing in this, and this is one of the three key levers, things we need to improve upon to reach our 4 stars and get to our financial goals.
Yeah, those are great. I think about a conversation I had recently with, his name's Gary Jacobs. He's a lobbyist, right? And one of the things he said was when he goes to meet with with people on the Hill, like the first thing he says when he goes to meet with them is um is how many members of that person, how many of their constituents um well are we touching now with this thing that he's talking about, right? So he immediately connects it to them, and I think that's such
Mm,
a good lesson for, yeah, even a quality leader coming to an executive steering committee or coming to some kind of finance committee with an ask, to your point, all the things you just said, right? Like how to connect the dots with the people in the room. Yeah, I think that's great
mm,
guidance.
I love that.
Anything we missed today? Anything else you would want to say about financial strategy?
Um, One thing we didn't talk about is how quality and financial goals can work against each other. I think that's really interesting to tease out a little bit, because this shows up all the time in the bids. So, like the quality or the growth team comes in and they're like, "Hey, our members really like it when they don't pay a single thing," and it's like, "Well, of course, they like it, you know." And then the finance team is coming in saying, "Okay, we really need to cut back on benefits. Like compared to other plans, we have the most rich benefits." And so it can get very extreme on both sides. So you have to compromise. You have to have someone in the middle who's thinking like, what's reasonable on both sides? How can we always have to keep the longer term goal of quality in the back of our minds, but what can we do to make reasonable like financial choices that still represent like a quality health plan, like an authentically quality health plan, and that connects to our vision. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act because I feel like that's a really good example of this.
Sure.
With Part D in 2025 and 2026, the rollout of a new Part D plan design, where I'll try not to get too technical about it and bore everyone, but basically, I mean, the CMS changed it so that members would their out-of-pocket maximum was lower, and once they reach that out-of-pocket maximum, they pay nothing. So great for members; their overall costs are reduced. But most MA plans, um, like before that, they didn't have a deductible on their plans, and so what happens is like if plans didn't change anything about their plan design despite this like out of pocket maximum change, um, all of a sudden they're offering a much richer plan than they offered before, because before members, they wouldn't pay a deductible, they'd have like co-pays, and then all of a sudden if they spent enough, now they're sharing in some of the liability. So anyways, there was a lot of pushback between financial goals and quality goals here, because the finance team is saying, "Hey, we need to offer a deductible now because it's going to keep our like the overall plan liability the same if we do that. You're just shifting where the money is." But the quality team and the growth team is saying, "Well, we can't like shock members with a deductible. That's going to be really steer members away from us." So yeah, that was a good example of that disconnect, and took a lot of education on the Part D is so confusing. The IRA was so confusing, so it took a lot of explaining. Here's what's happening, and we need to react.
Yeah, and I just think about all the financial pressure that plans are under today, right? It's with utilization and Part D and kind of everything, right? Like that's so affordability is, I think, maybe inarguably the most important thing plans are dealing with today. But quality. So there is tension, to your point, between affordability and quality in a lot of cases, right? So I mean, prior auths. Do we maybe we
Yeah.
feel like we have to put prior auths in place, more prior auths, um, just to prevent abuse or something? But that comes at a cost of member experience, right? And that's just one example, but it's a really obvious one where there is tension between affordability and quality, and it's the plan's just got to make the most informed decision, right? The key is to have all the stuff on the table, all the impacts on the table, and to be able to make an informed decision. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not easy.
Yeah, I think prior auths are a great example of that. And I've seen a lot of plans adopting a different mindset about it. Like it's not worth the impact to members.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, one or two more quick questions. One, what's one belief about quality strategy that most people disagree with you on?
Yeah. I think CAPS is just a lot of noise. And it's never really made sense to me. I don't understand how any plans get 5 stars on it, but just like, and especially if you compare to other non-MA lines of business, and it's not as competitive. And so the percentiles are totally different. And members can actually like do a rating of lower than 7, but like on MA, isn't a rating of 7 like 1 star or something.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be
I just
9 or
think CAPS
10.
is a totally random, tons of selection bias. Doesn't make
Yeah,
sense to me.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you on there. It's definitely an imperfect tool, as kind of we say in our firm. We
Mm.
we're we're big believers in member experience, but there has to be better ways to
Right.
evaluate it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe not one that people disagree on, but but it's one that I say a lot.
yeah, yeah. Great. All right, Eve. We yeah, and we did lose Nate. Nate has some technical difficulty, and we lost him a few minutes ago. Um, so sorry about that, and hopefully he's okay. He's just having some internet issues. It's one of those weeks. But yeah, so Eve, we will wrap there. So glad you joined us today on episode 1, for quality as a financial strategy, for this kind of topic that I think is, some of the messages we want to get out in this podcast this year in season 1 are things like that. Like quality is it's everything, right? In my experience and my opinion, it touches everything, and it's such an important aspect to to a healthcare organization, right? It should be driving financial strategy, should be driving culture, should be driving organizational strategy. um it's a very unique program, but thanks for your perspective. Really appreciate you being on, and being guest number 1. So yeah, Eve, how can people follow you? Where would they find you
You can
if
find
they
me
need?
on LinkedIn, Eve Anderson.
Eve Anderson. So we'll when we post this on LinkedIn, we will tag Eve. So please, yeah, please check her out, and follow her. All
Thank
right.
you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks,
Great
Eve.
conversation.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll talk next time.